So now you've just finished that race. You did it awesome. Basically what you did is you loaded up with glycogen beforehand. You then were taking 1 gram of carbohydrate per minute during your race. You finish your race. Now you're totally exhausted, but you've run a personal record. This is awesome. So now how do you replenish? How do you replenish those stores if you have to go out and run again? Or if you are a swimmer and you've just finished this incredible race and you've just won, set a world record. Now, how do you get back in the pool and make sure that you replenish all of those fuels that you've just dropped? And so this is old work from Dr. Ivy. Basically, what he was showing here is that in the open bars, what happened is you took the carbohydrate, you took a simple carbohydrate drink immediately after finishing your competition, or you waited 2 hours and you took in carbohydrate after 2 hours. And again, what's happening in that 2 hours is blood flow is returning to normal. You're not going to have as much blood supply to the working muscle. And so now what you're doing is you're taking the thing that you've eaten and you're dispersing it more, instead of targeting it to the muscles you've just worked. So let's see what happens to glycogen synthesis rates, which is on the y-axis here. And what you can see is if you look between 0 and 120 minutes, that's before this group has taken any carbohydrate. Look at the difference here. You've got a massive difference in how quickly or how fast you're synthesizing glycogen. So if you want to recover glycogen, what you want to do is you want to get it in quickly. Because if you wait out to 2 hours, now, they're both synthesizing glycogen fairly high, but if you've delayed, you're only getting this glycogen synthesis. You're this far behind. And if you take this out and you say, we're not just looking at kind of the glycogen synthesis rate, we're looking at to see how much glycogen you have, that's a big difference. And remember, your next performance is going to be dictated by how much glycogen you have in your muscle. So if you've taken it in the first 2 hours, rapidly after you've completed your race, now you're going to replenish that much more glycogen, about 3 times more glycogen. All right? So that's how we're going to do this for racing. Prep for it by increasing carbohydrate in the muscle beforehand. During the race, you're going to increase the carbohydrate availability by taking that 1 to 1.5 grams per minute of carbohydrate. And then after the race, you're going to take in a carbohydrate, and it doesn't have to be anything special. If your favorite thing is bananas, take some bananas that have brown dots all over them. Because when they've got the brown dots all over them, their glucose to fructose ratio is the 2 to 1 that is perfect. And it's the best one for absorbing and for improving performance. So if you like bananas, just take out those bananas that are a little bit have a little bit of brown on them. Take them out, squash them up, move it around, put it into a blender, do whatever you want. Now you've got a liquid that you can take, and that you can use during your race. That you can use after your race to replenish your glycogen or to increase your carbohydrate intake. There's no need that you need to use a commercial product. You can use jam if you have a favorite jam. You can use any of these structures because they all have this glucose-fructose mix. All right? So that's during the races. But what about training? Because training, again, we're training not to perform our best today. We're training to perform our best in the future, or we're training for life, to be around and to be active and to be incredibly fit much later into our life. So how do we change things when we're training? So if we're trying to train, we're trying to improve our endurance. So what we're doing is, how do we support this improvement in endurance with nutrition? And here what we're going to want to do is we're going to do what we call maximizing the metabolic stress while minimizing the mechanical stress. So we get injured from the mechanical stress. So what we want to do is we want to be able to use the same mechanical stress, but increase the amount of metabolic stress that we have. And one of the ways that we can do that is by doing what's called low glycogen training. And in low glycogen training, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either do fasted training, where you wake up in the morning and you go for your run first thing in the morning before you've eaten anything. And there, your liver is depleted from glycogen. Your muscle still has the glycogen it has from your meal the night before. So now your muscles are in good shape, but your liver is a little bit low on glycogen. So that's a stress, and that means the stress of the exercise is higher than if you woke up, had your 300 kilocalorie snack, and then an hour and a half later went and did your training. Okay, so that's one way. The other way to do it is in low glycogen training. And here what you do is you do some sort of an exercise to deplete muscle glycogen, and then you don't replenish it before your next training session. So a classic thing that we would use with a football club, especially during two-a-days, is we would have them come in, they would do their morning session, and then because, football players are like all of us, they like free food. So they're going to go to the cafeteria and they're going to get their food. So all we have to do is make sure that the cafeteria is serving something that's a protein and vegetables, and that there's no sweetened drinks. There's nothing like that. And so now they've got water options. They've got they've got the fizzy water options. There's no sugar options. And so they have nothing to replenish their glycogen from. So they're going to take in a protein like a fish and some vegetables. And now, even though they've had their lunch, they've not replenished their glycogen. Now they're going to go back an hour and a half later and they're going to go train again. In that next training session, their muscle glycogen is depleted. The last way to do it, I should have had a C group on here. The C group is both fasted and low glycogen training. And what you do here is you go out and you train in the evening, about 5 o'clock. And then you come home and you have a dinner. The dinner is going to have, again, protein and vegetables, no carbohydrate. And then what you do is you go to sleep. And you wake up the next day and you go and you do your first training session the next day. And that's what's called this overnight low glycogen training, or overnight low glycogen fasted training. All right? So there's 3 ways that we can do this. And again, the 3 ways that I listed them, A, B, and C there, that is really the way that we think about it. The fasted training is the easiest, the low glycogen training is next, and then the fasted low glycogen training is really the hardest. What we tend to do if we're going to do that is we tend to give people, when they wake up in the morning, we tend to give them a black coffee. Because the black coffee has caffeine, and we'll talk about this later. The caffeine makes you feel like the exercise or the activity that you're doing isn't as hard as it really is. All right, so what happens? Well, if we look at signals, and remember AMP kinase was this signal that was important for endurance adaptation. If we do an exercise and then we allow the individual to get back to normal glycogen, and we do a second exercise bout, that's this shaded bar here shows us the second exercise bout. So the second exercise bout done with normal glycogen, we get a nice increase in AMP kinase activity. But the second exercise done with low glycogen, you actually see a bigger increase in AMP kinase activity. And again, that's one of the things that we're doing. So this is the exact same exercise, but now we're getting a bigger AMP kinase activity. So now there's a bunch of different things that we can point to, that we can say that if we do low glycogen training, we're going to see an increase in these signals that improve our adaptation. One of them is we're better able to use fat, but the other one is we're also better able to increase things like mitochondria and things like the number of capillaries in our muscle. All right? So now that we do that, this is an animal study. Let's take it into humans. So this is a paper out of John Hawley's group. And what they did is they did that fasted low glycogen training. So what they did is they had 2 groups. The overall carbohydrate diet, the overall carbohydrate in their diet is exactly the same. All that changes is when they eat the carbohydrate. So in the SL group, SL means sleep low, sleep with low glycogen. What they're doing is they're doing exactly what we said. They're doing a training session at 5 o'clock. They're coming in and having a dinner. Their dinner doesn't have carbohydrate, but their breakfast and lunch had plenty of carbohydrate. Then what they do is they go to sleep, they wake up, and then they perform a long, slow distance session the next morning. So the 3 high-intensity sessions in the evening are designed to deplete muscle glycogen. Then the long, slow distance session is designed to give you that low mechanical stress, high metabolic stress, good for adaptation. And then what they did in the control group is all they did, same thing, PM, 3 times high intensity training, and then they had a dinner that had carbohydrate in it. So overall, the diets have the same carbohydrate, it's just when they had it. In the sleep low group, they didn't have it at dinner, they went to sleep with low carbohydrate or low glycogen, they woke up and did their next training bout. So what happened to performance? This is 10K running time. These are pretty decent runners, about 6 minutes per mile. And what you can see is in the control group, you're doing 3 weeks of training, Some people are getting a little bit better, but there's not no overall effect. You don't see a change in performance. But look at the performance in the 10K time in the sleep low group. You see this line, in every individual the line is going down, and it was actually a 3% improvement in performance. So this is a huge thing for athletes, because an athlete who can get 3% improvement in performance, as a good athlete, you're a 6-minute runner, 6-minute per mile runner, and now you can improve 3%. That's a big difference. And so that's really all it was no difference in overall amount of carbohydrate, just about when they took the carbohydrate. So if you want to maximize endurance adaptations, you want to do about 3 sessions a week in a low glycogen or a fasted state. Because what you're going to get there is you're going to get greater metabolic stress for the same amount of mechanical stress. The result is that for the same exercise, you're going to get more adaptation.